You're listening to the Good Question Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Our goal is to make each of our guests exclaim, that's a good question. I don't know the answer. Because when that happens, it means you, the listener, may be inspired to learn more beyond the interview and to ask great questions yourself that lead to new insights. In this podcast, we cover historical and current anthropology, comparative religion, and history. Welcome, and let's get started.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Good Question Podcast. My guest today is Edward Schultz. He's a physician and an author of Super Remedies that can change your life. We're going to talk about homeopathic care for various conditions. So Dr. Schultz is a compassionate physician and an author with a strong research background. He specializes in conventional and integrative and functional psychiatry. He's a board-certified psychiatrist, a director of homeopathy, and a founding diplomate of the American Holistic Medical Association. So welcome, Dr. Schultz. Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much. Oh my God, I have so many titles. It took almost half of the podcast to list them.
That's okay. Where are you from, by the way? You have an accent, so
I came to the United States in 1988 from Moscow. At that time, it was a part of the Soviet Union. So I have a Russian accent. And it's funny because I spent more time here in the States than I spent in the Soviet Union. But you keep the accent, I guess.
Yeah, after a certain age, it stays with you, I guess. Yeah. So tell me a bit about your background. How did you get interested in not just conventional medicine, but homeopathic medicine, integrated medicine?
So I became interested in medicine in the 5th grade. When I read a book about medicine, the light went on. And since very young age, I have a tendency to do super projects. So my super project at that time was saving the world, making everybody live for a very long time. Heart transplantation was very popular. So in the Soviet Union, we had an opportunity when we are in school to go and participate in different activities. I developed a method of heart transplant in frogs. When I was in the 9th grade, it was exhibited in the All Union exhibit in Moscow. And then I became aware by the 10th grade that actually the brain is the main thing. And then when I was in the medical school, I realized very quickly when I was studying yoga that very straightforward, direct approaches that conventional medicine offers are extremely effective in many, many cases, but there are cases when they're not. And I started looking for something else. I also was overweight, so I found a holistic physician in Moscow who privately helped people to lose weight and gave supplements, and she started giving me homeopathic remedies. I became interested in that and started studying homeopathy. It was extremely popular in the Soviet Union. In Moscow, for example, where I'm from, they had an outpatient homeopathic clinic. People waited for hours once a month to be signed on with one of the physicians for the next month. So I was a fully developed homeopath there. I also practiced family medicine, and I had great success treating people. One of the clients, by chance, was one of the American tourists who got sick while traveling in Moscow, and through friends got introduced to me. I gave him a remedy. He got better, came to the United States, told them about me, and they accepted me to the National Center for Homeopathy because it was so strange and weird that somebody in Russia is doing something. So when I came in 1988, we reconnected. So almost at the same time as I started working at Columbia University in Neuroendocrinology Research Fellowship, I also was invited to one of the annual meetings of the National Center. And then my life went on. So I graduated the psychiatric residency training at Beth Israel Medical Center, where I was a chief resident. And at the same time, I also took numerous courses in homeopathy, started working at the Center for Health and Healing at the Beth Israel Medical Center in 2000. It was the largest center of alternative medicine in the States as a staff homeopath. Went on to publish numerous books and articles. And here I am talking to you about homeopathy.
Okay. So for people that don't know, what is homeopathy? How does it work?
I'll start from answering your second question to a deep dissatisfaction of our listeners. We don't know how homeopathy works. We also don't know how many things work. For example, as a psychiatrist, I used to prescribe lithium. We still don't know how it works. It helps with mania. The serotonin reuptake inhibitor theory, SSRI, for medications like Prozac was abandoned in 2016. And now they are saying that Prozac increases neuroplasticity in the brain, which is a very general statement. And I can go on and on and on and on telling you that in medicine, we are very used to a situation when we do something, it makes people feel better, and we keep trying to understand how it works. Homeopathy was discovered by Christian Samuel Hahnemann yesterday. April 10th, 2025 would have been his 270th birthday, but I don't know that anybody lives like that. So he was born in 1755. He published the result of his studies and announced that he discovered a new method of treatment in 1796 in Hofland Journal, which would be something similar to Lancet or the Nature magazine today. He discovered homeopathy as a result of experimentation on initially himself and his, of course, children. He had 11 children and family members and friends. At the time when he was a physician, he also was actually a chemist and he also was a linguist. He spoke over 10 languages, was a genius. People weren't using that many exciting methods of treatment. They were giving people poisonous amounts of mercury. They were letting blood and putting leeches. But there was one miraculous cure for malaria, China. It's an herb. And for the reason we'll never find out because he never told us, Hahnemann decided to take it himself and see what's going to happen. To his surprise, he, a healthy, relatively young individual, while taking a medication that was curing malaria, started developing symptoms similar to malaria. So the thing that cured malaria in a healthy person kind of caused it. So he went on to literature.
It's like smallpox vaccine, I guess, in a way.
Yeah. So he discovered many, many examples. And in 1796, he dared to publish an article in which he proclaimed that he discovered a new principle of cure, like cures the like. To give you an idea of something similar in our daily practice, we use stimulants to treat restless people with attention deficit disorder. So the stimulant that causes people to become very restless and not being able to concentrate, it actually calms them down. It's a very crude example because in homeopathy, treatment is very individualized. When Hahnemann was taking China, he basically developed a method of finding and describing homeopathic preparations that he called in German Prüfung. And all the German listeners, pardon me for my poor German accent, which means experiment. So in order to describe a homeopathic remedy, healthy volunteers would take diluted preparations, whatever existed there, China, different herbs. They used mercury, so mercury was proved. So we call it a proving. And then if they develop symptoms, they describe them in a very orderly manner. And the compilation of these descriptions, now we have about 3,500 remedies, is called Materia Medica. Unfortunately, we never changed the name. Hahnemann, during his lifetime, discovered about 100 remedies and described them. Even he, a genius, couldn't keep all the symptoms in. So he created a cross-reference tool, probably the first cross-reference tool ever in medicine, which he called the repertory, again, something from the olden times, when the symptom that is either caused by the substance when a person is poisoned or discovered during the proving or cured is listed, and then all the remedies that help with the symptom are listed in 4 different categories. The strongest one would be when it cures it all the time, and the weakest sometimes. So when a homeopath sees a person, they collect symptoms according to the homeopathic tradition, and if they match, they give a remedy. I'll give you a very simple example, if you don't mind. For example, if your child wakes up in the middle of the night with high fever, with very large pupils, red face, and cold hands and legs and feet, and is confused, it's a typical set of symptoms for a homeopathic preparation of belladonna. Belladonna, which means a beautiful lady, is a plant, and beautiful Italian ladies in the olden times used to put drops of belladonna extract in their eyes so they become glossy with white pupils. But if another child wakes
Why,
up...
as a thing of beauty or what?
Yeah, it was a thing of beauty. Well, it
Oh,
was...
to look stoned?
I guess I guess they like them stoned. And if another child wakes up that same night with high fever and is morbidly scared, restless, and has very small pupils, the remedy would be aconitum. So these are simple examples. It becomes significantly more complicated when it comes to treatment of complicated cases. So proving is number one. Another thing for which homeopathy has been ridiculed and called names including pseudoscience is a potentization process. Again, no idea why Hahnemann decided to potentize remedies. So he was diluting them. That we kind of can understand, because if you want to harness a healing power of belladonna, you'd better dilute it, because otherwise you are going to poison your patient. But he also was shaking it vigorously at each step of dilution, and nobody knows why. He also was a prominent chemist and alchemist. At that time, almost everybody was an alchemist and a mason, and he was both. But he didn't leave us any idea why he did it. So one of the theories is that when he was traveling with the set of remedies in his purse, because they did it using horses, maybe it shook the remedies, but nobody knows why. So while remedies are potentized, they are diluted and shaken vigorously. So essentially you wind up with such a high dilution that you cannot detect a substance. And hence people say that homeopaths giving people empty sugar pills or like water. And just because we have an amazing personality and can hypnotize people, we achieve the results. I'll tell you what, homeopathy also helps animals, and there is a veterinarian Academy of Homeopathy of the United States. I went to the homeopathic conference in Turkey a couple of years ago, and they have an enormous amount of homeopathic veterinarians who are very...
Quick question for you here. So, when we take drugs, the pharmaceutical companies want to isolate one compound. But if we take belladonna, for instance,
right,
there must be hundreds and thousands of compounds that we have no idea how they interact. If I just ate a part of the plant, or I get a distillation of it. So when you do your dilutions, yes, the one substance you have is diluted way down. Maybe, does anyone look at all the other compounds that are in it? Maybe there's an abundance of them and they don't dilute quite as much. So what you end up with is very little of the main ingredient, but maybe a lot of the other ingredients or more of the other ingredients. And now it changes the nature of how it affects you. And that's why dilution of it works.
Listen, it's an excellent question, but let's talk about the reality of dilutions. By the way, if you go online, you can see how homeopathic remedies are prepared. I don't dilute them personally. They are done according to the Homeopathic Pharmacopoeia of the United States, regulated by the FDA as an over-the-counter medication since 1938, and it's done in specialized facilities. So, for example, I very frequently use in my practice a homeopathic concentration 30C, C like in cat, it stands for 100 in Latin, or 200. 30C is 10 to the minus 60 dilution. The number of atoms in the Milky Way in which we live is 10 to the power of 63 or 64. It's enormously diluted. And 200C is a dilution 10 to the power of minus 400. So whatever substance was there, it's undetectable. I guess I answered your question. No, there is nothing there. I mean, nothing.
Right, so even if there was other substances, they would all be at such low levels as to be undetectable.
It's not important that it's undetectable. For example, we also use lower dilutions. For example, 60 would be 10 to the power of minus 12. That's very close to the concentration of hormones in our bloodstream. So
has anyone taken modern medications and done a serial dilution on them?
Yes.
Or do you only do it on natural substances?
Well,
so what's the difference if you do a natural versus a natural compound?
Well, it's a set of exceptional questions. So I'm very impressed by you, seriously. So
I
let's
appreciate it.
talk about Dr. Jacques Benvenisti, who is not with us anymore, but he passed away. He was a very famous immunologist who worked at the Pompidou Research Center in Paris. He made himself famous by discovering a quantitative method of assessing the activity of immunoglobulins. Quantitative means that not only he could tell you that the cell culture responds, but how in numbers it responds. And he became interested in homeopathy because it's so weird as an actual scientist. Instead of saying, oh, it cannot work because it can, he decided to conduct an experiment. When he first took immunoglobulin A and applied it undiluted to a population of T cells and showed that they respond. Then he diluted it in two ways. One, just 1 to 200, just plain diluted it. And in another way, he prepared a homeopathic dilution with serial dilution, shaking it vigorously at each step. So the diluted immunoglobulin, just simply diluted, didn't work. And the homeopathically prepared did work. So then he applied heat to this dilution. It lost its capacity to work. He suggested that due to unique qualities of water, a molecule of water, it's apparently capable of transferring biologically important information. He published the article, it's a very short article, 3 pages, available online, about this study in the Nature magazine in 1988. When he submitted the initial publication, the publicist told him, look, Jacques, we all love you and you are a famous scientist, but it's crazy. So I'm not going to publish it unless it's repeated in other places. So this protocol was repeated in 3 other universities, one in Italy, one in Canada, one in Israel. So the number of authors is very large, it's a few lines. Then the article got published and still there was a bottom note by the publisher saying that it cannot be because it simply cannot be. And Benveniste was ostracized by the scientific community. He eventually lost his job. This experiment, only after he died, was repeated again and again was positive. But there is no understanding. So it's been shown that homeopathically prepared solutions are biologically active, but no one is looking because in order to conduct a decent study, it needs to be funded. And there is no funding available. Yes.
Does it matter if you prepare a dilution from like ultra pure water or distilled water versus just regular tap water?
No, it's actually prepared using a 78%, in homeopathy, 78% alcohol, because Hahnemann also developed a method of dispensing the remedy that would be pleasurable. So for some reason, he realized that the medication will come in significantly faster if you put it under the tongue. Nowadays, we understand, they didn't know it then. Maybe he knew, but he never told us, that this way it passes the round and doesn't need to go through the liver. Not that it's important for homeopathy, we still don't know how it works. So he applied these dilutions on little sugar pills, which was actually common to dispense medications at that time. And if you apply water on sugar pills, it will just dissolve them. So all the homeopathic remedies are prepared as a 78% alcohol solution, and then in a particular standardized way, they're applied on sugar pills that are made out of milk sugar. Children love these remedies because they taste like candy. So you put them under your tongue. Homeopathic remedies also are sold or dispensed as solutions, and you can dilute them in water. In water, they still work. It doesn't really matter whether it's tap water or not. So the whole thing is actually totally crazy. I've been doing it for over 40 years. I get pretty good results. And every time it happens, it's a miracle to me. I don't understand how it works, I'll be honest.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So no one does?
What's crazy is that nobody is looking. And look, in India, there are 200,000 plus licensed homeopathic physicians. The royal family has a royal homeopathic physicians. There is a royal homeopathic hospital in London. Homeopathy is popular in Europe. In Turkey, it's growing like crazy. It's popular in Russia and Ukraine. It's popular in Israel. It used to be very popular in the United States. And if you want to ask me what happened, I'll tell you.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sure it was sidelined as quackery and, instead, allopathic. Crab medicine came in its place.
In the United States, in the beginning of the 20th century, there was a huge influx of immigrants from Europe, mostly. And a lot of people wanted to become doctors at that time. And, there also was an industrial revolution, and a lot of people came to the cities and started to work. So people needed more doctors. Opening a medical school was very easy. You and I and maybe another person could have decided to open a medical school, and off you go. You started teaching medicine, and the registration was very simple. The American government decided to hire a special expert who would go to Europe, where standards of medical education was highly developed, research it, and then bring the results in so the American government could develop standards of medical education. The name of this person was Abraham Flexner, and in 1910, he published what became a famous Flexner Report, in which he set the standards of medical education that were applied to medical schools. And the American government told allopathic, by the way, Hahnemann coined the term of allopathic medicine and homeopathic medicine. So to regular allopathic schools, homeopathic schools that were many, and homeopathy was very strong, and osteopathic schools, guys, here is the date by which you have to develop a full curriculum, which includes conventional pharmacology, anatomy, pathology, blah, 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 blah. And everybody said yes. But Dr. Karl Lippe, who was the head of the homeopathic community at that time and was famous for not missing a single case, meaning all of his patients got better according to documentation, said, look, we are very strong, we don't care, we are not doing it. And guess what happened? They didn't do it, and they started dying off because their medical schools started getting closed. There was no new homeopathic physicians produced. The last professor of homeopathy, Dr. Burke, finished his tenure at Hahnemann Medical School. That's how the medical school in Philadelphia used to be called until recently, left. So less and less homeopathic physicians were available. For example, I also have a title of Doctor of Homeopathy. I'm a member of the American Institute of Homeopathy that was created 3 years before the American Medical Association. But if you ask me how many people with my title are alive, I would say that it's probably less than 50.
Oh,
so
wow.
Most of the people who practice homeopathy in the United States are either naturopathic physicians who are trained, and also what is called professional homeopaths, meaning lay people who received very thorough homeopathic education and who in some states can practice legally, for example, in Arizona. So we have a problem. No funding for research. Homeopathic medical schools don't exist anymore, and there are very few people who practice it in the United States.
Right. Where is the number one place where it is practiced?
In the world or in the United States?
In the world.
In the world, India. 200,000 plus physicians. And
okay.
anytime I go to international there is an organization which is called Liga Medicorum Internationale. It's an international society of homeopaths. And anytime I go to their conference, I'm blown away by very thorough presentations by Indian physicians with MRIs and the X-rays and anything you want that show amazing cases of cure. It's amazing.
So what kind of conditions are susceptible to homeopathy?
I'm going to say something completely crazy to you. The problem is not the illness. The problem is whether or not a homeopath can find a perfect match for the patient, which we call a similium. Remember, similia, similibus curenter, like cures the like. It's a very difficult job. No lab work is available. It's a complicated process. I mean, it's computerized, but still you ought to be able to collect the data. So the main problem is not my patient. The main problem is me. For acute illnesses, it's kind of easier. For chronic, not as much. But I can tell you that I had great success treating children with autism, asthma, digestive problems, migraine headaches, you name it. There is a homeopathic physician, Dr. Ramakrishnan. I used to know him. I don't know whether he's still around, who published his protocol for treatment of cancer with homeopathy. Would I recommend somebody to treat cancer with homeopathy instead of conventional medicine? Absolutely not, because it's unsafe. Because in the United States, we don't have such hospitals. But there have been reports of successful cures of some forms of cancer also. I don't have any experience in that field.
Oh, you stay away from that because of the conditions in which you work, but
No,
other conditions are more safe?
I stay away from that because I find it extremely unsafe. How can you treat somebody with a serious illness? For example, I had patients as a psychiatrist with attention deficit disorder, as I said, autistic children, people with anxiety and major depressive disorder, and even bipolar disorder, and certainly PTSD. I'm actually one of the few people who had a very large experience in treating people with PTSD after 9/11. I had great success. When I presented in Berlin in 2003, I had no standing room, not because of me, but because of my experience. But I would never take a case of schizophrenia because these people need to get better today. I don't have any room to give one remedy, see whether it works, and then if I made a mistake, give another remedy. I strongly encouraged all my patients with severe illnesses to continue on conventional treatment. If I had a patient with bipolar disorder, I would insist that they first take conventional medication, so we stabilize them, and then everybody has what I would call breakthrough symptoms, meaning not everything is perfect. So then when you start treating them and they get better on homeopathy, all of a sudden the doses of medications they require are less and less, and you can safely discontinue. Sometimes you can't. So safety first. I took a Hippocratic oath. Primum non nocere. First, don't cause harm. In India, Brazil, Argentina, where they have homeopathic hospitals, it's a totally different story.
Does it work over there? What are the reports?
Yeah. But anytime you go to a homeopathic international conference, there are people presenting from South America, from India, from Turkey. Homeopathy is huge. From Russia, from Ukraine. I mean, not since the war started in Europe, but there are homeopathic magazines which publish reports of successful cases with detailed explanations of how the remedy was found. But if you go to Wikipedia, it will tell you that it's pseudoscience and homeopaths are basically con artists.
Basically, what? You said quacks, or what do you mean?
Yeah. They're saying that we are the quacks. Yeah.
I know, of course. I mean, is homeopathy becoming more accepted or less accepted? Being attacked, or like what's happening with it?
Again, thank you very much. It's another excellent question. I don't know how you come up with all this question. You must be a genius. So homeopathy in the United States was extremely popular in the 70s and in the 80s, at the end of 80s and the 90s when I came here. But there was a concerted effort to discourage people from using homeopathy. The most active group are relatively younger people in Europe. And they keep publishing falsified studies and making claims, and they're very good in PR. And homeopaths in the United States made numerous mistakes by shooting themselves in the foot. Not only did they ignore in 1900s the need to adapt to the current then situation, they also joined a fight against vaccination because they felt strongly that the vaccine for tuberculosis was basically stolen from homeopathy. Homeopathy has a remedy called tuberculinum, and it's been used before. So it's kind of naive because if you are little, small, a little teeny tiny doggy, you don't bark at the elephant. It will destroy you. It will stomp. So people naively thought that if they are going to show a relatively limited number of good results, people are going to go and see them. And yes, I mean, people like me are kind of busy, but we are very few and beyond. And the number of people who need help is humongous. So there was a very limited number of people who participated in publicizing homeopathy. And because homeopathy has not been funded, like I can tell you, I sat for a year, maybe for two, on the review board at the National Institute of Health, NIH, where we reviewed applications for complementary and alternative medicine.
Yeah.
In my entire tenure, there wasn't a single application for a research study in homeopathy. Because in order to design a good study, let's admit you need a homeopath, because if you need to design a study on nuclear physics, you need a nuclear physicist, not a genius, right? So you need to find a homeopath who has the education and the time to do that. You need to find a prestigious research institution where people are willing to say, it must be interesting. Why don't we take a look at it? Instead, everybody says it's a piece of garbage and quackery. So hence, no application.
Yeah, and I guess anyone that would work on it would be vilified and attacked, so no one's going to work on it because they all
Yeah,
need
so
funding,
yeah,
you know.
yeah. So there were a couple of very good studies. For example, a very famous study is by Dr. Jennifer Jacobs on treatment of acute diarrhea with homeopathic remedies. It's a very, very well designed study, but it was published a long time ago. There was an amazing study published by Mitchell Fisher, who he passed away. He was a royal homeopath, actually, a homeopath for the royal family and the medical director of the Royal Homeopathic Hospital. So he published an amazing study of treatment of chronic arthritis with homeopathy. But these are, I can name maybe 2 or 3 or 4 studies. I, by the way, published an article in Medical Clinics years ago, which is called Homeopathy, where all the research at that time is analyzed, and it's available. All you need to do is to Google me, and but the bottom line is, no one is looking, and Elon Musk is not interested yet.
Well, how does homeopathy advance then, or does it all look backwards? I mean,
Yes.
who's innovating in it and doing work in it and tweaking and trying different stuff?
Yeah, no, the situation is horrible. If you ask me how many younger than me people I know who are actively practicing homeopathy, I can tell you personally, I don't know anyone, and I'm a member of the board of directors of the National Center for Homeopathy. Not that I know every single person in the world. There are younger so-called professional homeopaths who I respect, but they are not medical doctors, and they cannot practice legally in a lot of states. So if you ask me today who I would recommend, I know quite a few people, but all of them are my age. I'm 69, or maybe in their 60s, but that's about it.
So is the profession being kept alive in India and places like that, or is it, on a whole, is it falling into more disfavor, and is it
Oh, no.
dying?
Homeopathy in India is huge. It's growing,
Okay.
but you can find on YouTube, you can find Indian physicians speaking against homeopathy. The fight has begun in the 18th century, where homeopaths were very popular, Homeopathy became famous for a very simple reason. There was a horrible epidemic of scarlet fever in Austria and Germany when Hahnemann was practicing actively. No treatment was available. Children were dying left and right. Scarlet fever is an ultimate case of strep throat, severe case. Antibiotics were available at that time. So Hahnemann was treating a family where they had 4 children, and one of the weakest children was receiving a homeopathic remedy called belladonna. Remember, I spoke about it, for a totally different reason. So all of them got sick, and except for him, for this child. So Hahnemann decided that maybe belladonna at that time was protecting people from scarlet fever, and he started giving it left and right, and it did. So it became so well known that a person who today would be called a Minister of Health of Austria issued a decree which required conventional physicians prescribe belladonna for scarlet fever. That's how homeopathy became world famous. Not because somebody said something. Or, for example, when there was a flu pandemic in 1918 in Europe, the death rate was huge, over 20%. Homeopathic patients and their records was around 1 to 2%. But at that time, they had a lot of homeopaths. Not anymore. There is no data for COVID, for example, because who would treat COVID with homeopathy? I mean, come on. We are not crazy.
I mean, we're not crazy. We're not. If people are treating cancer with it in certain countries and all kinds of conditions, why is it so crazy?
Yeah, but why would I take a risk to be blamed that I gave
right.
a sugar pill and he died? I mean, God forbid. No, I'm not doing it.
Yeah. I see what you mean. I know you have to protect yourself and watch out. I understand.
Well, yeah. I mean, you have to survive.
Yeah. So what's I don't know. Are you looking to apply it to new conditions, or are you happy with the clinical work you're doing and you're plenty busy? Like, what's your, what are your career goals or stance from here?
Well, there is always an opening for seeing a little bit more patients. And if people want to find me, I have a website which is called drschaltz, drschaltz.com. And the reason I published my book, this is my 3rd book on homeopathy, and I'll tell your audience first time, the biggest secret, Yet another book, which is called Mother Ignatia, is coming out on the 17th or 18th of April. It's about a very important remedy for a broken heart. So I publish these books because people can try homeopathy themselves for very simple conditions. Like, what the hell do you do with a child with teething who is screaming like crazy all night, and you have to kick them all night? And guess what? There is a simple homeopathic remedy, chamomilla, made out of chamomile. And if you give it homeopathically prepared, it solves most of the cases. Maybe it won't help to somebody. So my book has flow charts to show you what else can be given. Or for example, when somebody has an acute earache, you know why pediatricians prescribe so many antibiotics?
Why?
Because parents tell them to do it. There was a research study conducted. So now there is a method in conventional pediatrics that is called watchful waiting. When you come to a physician with your child with an earache, and the doctor tells you, look, the membrane is still preserved. Maybe it will go away by itself if it's viral. Why don't I give you a prescription for Augmentin, let's say, or some other antibiotic? Take it out and then wait. If your child is not better in a day or two, start giving it. I'm talking about conventional pediatricians. So there is a window of opportunity when you can try to give a homeopathic remedy. And if it doesn't work, okay, no harm is done. You have antibiotic.
They seem to be less strong than medications. Medications are like a punch in the face or the gut, and homeopathic stuff or more natural stuff, it seems to be less strong and take longer and not as good, but there's no side effects though.
Listen, sir, I have to disagree with you. In my book, there is a description of many cases. Homeopathy, when it's prescribed in acute cases, properly works immediately. For example, if a child presents with a typical clinical picture of belladonna or aconitum, and you give it to them, fever goes down in the course of under half an hour. In acute cases, I have a case described in this book. When I was working at the Center for Health and Healing, we had their very gifted, famous holistic pediatrician, Larry Palevsky. One of his friends was going to have lunch with him. So he was a runner. He ran over the Brooklyn Bridge and slipped and fell, and he extended his arm and was in pain. So by the time he came to see Larry, he was guarding his arm, holding it, and Larry told him, look, I'm pretty sure you broke it, but let's go see Ed Schultz. He does homeopathy. It's going to be like a miracle. So they came to see me. I told them, guys, are you crazy? I mean, the guy probably has a fracture. The only thing that I can do is to give him Arnica montana, which is a very, very highly recommended remedy for trauma, physical trauma.
And that Arnica,
bring him to the emergency room. So they walked over to the emergency room. The walk was about 20 minutes. By the time the nurse was seeing this guy, he had no swelling and no pain. She thought they were kidding and wanted to kind of get to know her. They had to convince her to have a doctor see him and do an x-ray. And of course, he had a fracture. And of course, it had to be repositioned and treated. But how much trouble was saved by removing the pain and swelling? So did homeopathy cure him from the fracture? Absolutely not. Did it help with his symptoms? Absolutely yes. So
it's a good marriage between allopathic medicine and homeopathy.
Listen, we should not be fighting. We should be working together. It's no big deal. We don't need to be enemies anymore. It's over. Let's be friends.
What about phage therapy? I know you can't do everything, but that I've heard was very popular over in Russia, Ukraine, etc. Did you learn anything about that? Phages, the viruses that feed off bacteria, like bacteria phages.
Yeah. Listen, it might or might not be effective, but I have to tell just my educated opinion to our listeners. And look who is talking, a homeopath. But there is no cure for all, okay? If something is claimed to cure everything, most likely the claim is false. Even the strongest antibiotic that helped 90% of people, let's say with gonorrhea, is going to fail in 10%. I don't know the statistics. Don't hold me responsible, but we all know that there is no cure for all. The beauty of homeopathy is that we take every person as an individual and try to tailor the treatment to their individual needs. To me, a person who is a night person is very different from the person who is more active in the morning. For me, and I can go on and on and on. I don't want to take up too much time.
No, it's okay.
Yeah. So so is it popular? Yes. Are we going to find out, like we did find out with everything else, that there are enormous side effects and something horrible? Of course we will. 100%. 100%.
Interesting. So where can people learn more about homeopathy or try it? Can they get the remedies over the counter, as you said?
Yeah, so remedies are sold as an over-the-counter medication. I buy mine very frequently on Amazon. There are other suppliers. The most popular company, and I don't represent them, unfortunately, they don't pay me, unfortunately, is called Boiron or Blue Tubes. And of course, since I published a book, I would recommend people to get Super Remedies. My recent book, it has flow charts, and then try it in the situation when either you have a window of opportunity, or, for example, somebody gets stung by a bee. Like, what the hell do you do? And we have a homeopathic remedy called Apis mellifica, made out of the whole bee. And if you take it, the consequences of a bee sting of any severity go away. But still,
that's good.
Somebody is developing a severe allergic reaction to a bee sting. Take the Apis and call 911 or go to the emergency room. Nobody is going to be upset if you came and there is nothing there. Less work for them. But if it didn't work, you should be safe. And you should carry, if you know that you have severe allergies, you should carry an atropine syringe with you.
How long does it take homeopathic remedies to work?
15 minutes.
Oh, that's not long. Okay, so they'll know.
It's very, very, very fast.
So they're not in danger because they'll know very quickly.
Yeah, you very quickly.
I feel better.
Yeah. So homeopaths also sell what we call homeopathic kits, when the most popular remedy are already prepackaged for you. But you need to have some kind of a book and some kind of a general education. So, of course, I'm going to keep pushing my book on you, but it's very comprehensive. It's written based on my experience. If you want to buy another book, that's fine. There are tons of books on homeopathy on Amazon.
Okay, well, very good. Well, again, any other parting thoughts or URLs to send people to, or you think you covered it pretty well?
The only thing I want to tell you that you need to be safe, and you should not look for an, in quotes, easy way out if, God forbid, you have a serious chronic problem. You need to take insulin for diabetes, okay? You need to take antibiotics if you have pneumonia. Do homeopaths know how to treat pneumonia with homeopathy? Yes. Can it be done safely in the United States? Absolutely not, because we don't have homeopathic hospitals. So safety first, but I would try it out and see what happens. In my own life, for example, I take a homeopathic remedy first, and if it doesn't work, I take whatever I need. What's the big deal?
That's good.
Okay.
Well, very good. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Good Question Podcast. Please email support@thegoodquestionpodcast.com if you have any referrals to great guests for us to interview. Visit thegoodquestionpodcast.com to hear more interviews. And please help us spread the word by rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to this podcast.